Alrighty, Lumberjacks, welcome back. So today we have a very long video full of lots of really awesome, cool stuff that I'm really excited to bring you guys. So we're going from the last 1.21 update to we are now 1.3. So apparently there's a few people that were getting confused by the 1.201, 02, 03. So we're just doing whole numbers now. We're going to do 1.3. The next update will be 1.4, 1.5, etc. Just to avoid confusion so that you know you're in a whole new bracket. So this update is 1.3. So this will be coming out later this week. I wanted to give this little kind of patch update video ahead of the release so that you guys could really absorb all of the changes. And there is a lot of changes. I am so incredibly proud of this update and the craziness that we've come across and changed. It's going to be really good. So we have a lot of stuff to go over. Now, in these mod update videos, I'm not going to go over the new mods. I'm going to tell you what they are, but I'm not going to go over them because I now do the teaser trailers. So you guys have seen the teaser videos over the last month revealing the new equipment and maps and that kind of stuff. So in these videos, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to review the actual mod changes, like the gameplay changes and stuff like that. So the new mods that we have in this one are Legion Hills logging map, the CAT568LL, the CAT551, and the Dangle felling head. And also the Dangle felling head is color selectable because people were like, oh, I don't like it that it's this color. And it's like, okay, well, you can pick any color you want for the Dangle felling head. All right. Okay. So we're going to jump right to the new changes. So the biggest, well, one of the biggest changes is sound effects. So on all of the equipment, on all of these machines, they all have new sound effects. New sound effects taken directly off of heavy equipment, off of loaders, running engines, all that fun stuff. So new start sound effects, new shut off, new running sound effects inside and outside. I spent almost a month of time working on the sounds to try to get them very similar to, or at least as close as we can get to real life in terms of some of the operation. Now, again, this game is a little bit limited in terms of what you can do with sound, but I think we got a pretty good roll on it. So, for instance, the one thing people complained about was the fact that the machines were really quiet. So the machines were extremely quiet in comparison to the in-game ones. So the in-game machines were way louder than all of these machines. So that's been changed. So now all of this equipment, when you fire it up, it's around equivalent to the sound of in-game machines. That way you're not having like really quiet FDR machines. Then you fire up a Giants machine. It's like super loud. This way it's kind of equal across the board. The other thing that we changed was going from template engine sounds to direct played sound files. So this game has templates, which allow you to kind of register the sound of an engine based on the torque of the tires and all that kind of stuff to create a sound effect. Now, one of the biggest problems I had in previous mods is it used in-game templates, but the problem is based on the torque and velocity and all that fun stuff involved with the tires, because these machines are so heavy and so torquey, the game can't read the tire configurations very correctly. So what would happen is while you're running the machine, if I move the boom up and down or the stick up and down or I bump the machine, it would do this kind of like a weird kind of like the engine was cutting in and out. And you guys know what I'm talking about because I'm sure you've heard it, where it sounds like your machine is like just glitching, just and I absolutely hated that for the longest time. So now with this new update, that sound is changed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire up this machine and just kind of describe what's going on, but I'll be quiet here so you can actually kind of hear it. So fire up time. So that's the running sound. As you can see, it's got the nice kind of turbo-y whistle. It has a Caterpillar-style engine that we got the sound effect from. And this is your running sound. Now, unfortunately, we weren't able to have, like, rev-up sounds with sound files. It just doesn't work. So, like, if you move your machine around and stuff while you're operating, it doesn't, like, get that nice kind of roomy run-up. But the bass sound of it is a lot better for running sound. It's a lot more realistic to a real loader. Same with the track sounds have been changed a little bit. So when you're tracking, A little more clunky, a little less squeak. Well, there's still a little bit of squeak in there, but a little more clunky. And the last ones, they were really high pitch. And that's just the outside running sound. Now, the really big changes and the great stuff is on the inside. So inside the cab, much quieter, very similar to real life. Unless you have a window open in real life, the cabs are generally pretty quiet. So inside the cab, what I really wanted to imitate was the sound of actual operation. Because if your machine's absolutely silent while you're operating and moving around, moving the boom, doing that kind of stuff, it's wrong. It feels wrong. As an operator who runs this stuff in real life, it's really weird to be in a really quiet cab. So what I did is I made it so pretty much every single movement that you make on this machine has a bassy kind of deep sound effect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of move the machine around. I'm going to stop talking so you guys can listen. And just listen to every kind of, there's clunks and the cab shake and kind of interesting sounds. So here, I'll just let you listen to this. Right on. So yeah, basically what I'm imitating is when you're operating in real life, and like I said, I've operated these machines a lot in real life, and that sound that I was going for was kind of the bassy sound of like operating. Because when you're inside the cab's rattling and shaking. You can hear the metal shaking, the plastics, the thump and grind of the cylinders and the boom arm moving, that kind of stuff. So now, if you're an audio person and you like the sound of audio, I just recommend when you get this update, turn all your volumes up really loud and don't turn on any music or anything. Just operate the machine and move it around, and you'll hear just all the consistencies of sound. And it does really offer you a different experience in first person. It really is a lot different. Just having those sound effects kind of rolling around. Same with your tracks. Your tracks are a lot more thumpy now. They used to sound almost identical to when you were outside, but now you have that kind of low track sound, which is a lot more close to real life, because you can kind of just barely make out the track sound when you're in the cab. It's just more of a thump than anything. But yeah, just the overall experience of swinging your arms around and operating, it's pretty cool to hear the sound effects. So we're just going to shut that off. So yeah, the overall sound in general has been improved greatly on all the machines. So I'm not going to go over every sound effect because there's been lots of changes. So the processor head now has a new cut sound that's taken directly off of Wartaw. So it's kind of a more of a kind of a zappy sound, but it's pretty satisfying when you're cutting. Also, the feller buncher. The feller buncher has a new cut sound on that as well, so it's actually got a good kind of grindy feller buncher hit when you knock trees down. And you can hear it inside the cab lightly, but outside the cab you can hear it a lot clearer as well. The other one was the skidder, so we'll actually fire up the skidder. So here's the Tiger Cat skidder. So these guys I gave a lot more of a kind of a screaming kind of engine sound. So they fire up like normal, but when you start traveling, you'll hear that low kind of rah. I love that screaming sound. And the volumes have also all been equaled out to be similar to, like I said, the Giants in-game equipment sounds. So they're loud, they're equal. And again, inside the cab, it's quite quieter, which is nice. So you don't have that exact same sound effect. On some of the other updates, that sound effect would be almost as loud in the cab as it was out of it. So it's a really nice kind of soft interior sound. But then out of the cab, it's just screaming. So a lot of people wanted that sound back, and now you guys have it. So the skidders sound a lot more violent, which is kind of what people wanted. Same difference on the Clark skidder. We have the chains that go on the tires. So on those machines, or any future skidders that I put chains on, the chain sound effect is there now. So when you're rolling, you can hear the ka-cling, ka-cling of the chains and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool as well. Okay, so another big change that we had was the maps and the trees, because I'm always tweaking the trees to try to find the best place, and I think we're pretty much at it here now, or as close as we're going to get for a while. So all of the trees have had a change to the friction of the way they settle. So in the last update or previous updates, the friction value was really high on the trees, meaning that they stick together. High friction, they stick together kind of like there's sap all over them and they stick together like glue. So it had a very high friction, which worked in some instances, but for the most part, it caused a lot of issues with the locking straps, and it sometimes caused issues with the piles themselves. So in this update, what we've gone and done is we've lowered the rolling friction, and we've also lowered the general friction. We've also changed some of the physics on them to kind of balance them out. But basically what's going to happen now is when you're loading them onto the truck or into the bunks, they'll settle into the bunks a lot nicer. And I'll demonstrate that here in a minute when we're doing the grapple coverage here. So basically with that change, they don't stick in a big pile. So basically when you were loading before, you'd put a pile on there, but they wouldn't settle into the bunk very nice. They would kind of stick and all pile up in a big group, like they were all stuck in a big clobber together. So as much as it wasn't a huge issue, when you were loading, it was kind of a pain in the butt because you had to constantly keep tamping down the load to get the trees to stick into the bunks properly or to get them level. But the biggest problem that we had was the locking straps. When you turned on the locking straps for the load, the logs would actually try to creep out of the pile. So you'd have, logs on the bottom and logs on top. And what would happen is when you turned the locking straps on, those logs in the bottom, because the friction was so high and the pressure was so high, they would actually try to jitter and they'd try to climb their way out of the top of the bunk. And unfortunately, that's just the way the physics are in this game. They're not perfect. So to mitigate that, we've now taken the friction values down by a whole pile. So now when you drop them into the bunks, they settle way nicer. They slide into each other. They all like roll into a nice spot and settle way faster than they did before. And in turn, when you turn the locking straps on, although the locking straps will never ever be perfect because they jitter and do weird things as well, they don't climb as much. If you load really heavy stuff on top of little stuff, sometimes they do weird stuff, but for the most part, they settle in the bunks really, really nice. And you guys will notice when you're loading or when you're transporting logs, you don't have to constantly hit the locking strap button as much as you used to, and they settle a lot nicer, which is super good. So before we demonstrate the loading and the new physics for the logs themselves, I want to go over the machines because that's another really, really, really big update is the machines. So I have found replacing the entire wheel system and playing with the weights, I've found almost what I feel is as close to real life as I've gotten in a long time. And I know every update I say like, oh, this is the best I've ever done, but this is for sure the best I've ever had in FS22 so far for reaction of machines to logs to weights and dynamics. So brand new track system. So the physics for the wheels has been updated. The suspension system has been updated. The weights of the machines are quite heavy again, but that is to mitigate some other issues. So I've had reports from people saying that when they're playing, what'll happen is when they're turning the cab, so for instance, if you're swinging the machine left and right with a heavy head or implement on, what was happening was the tracks were actually spinning, like they would turn on an angle, like they would actually shift left and right really violently while they were working. Now, if you have 60 frames a second and you're playing, you don't have that issue. As you can see, the tracks are settling absolutely beautifully. But as soon as you go to a low frame rate, so if I switch over to physics mode, my frame rate basically gets cut in half. So when I switch over to a low frame rate, you can see the tracks as I spin left and right are jittery. Like they kind of shake a little bit. See how they, let's go here. There you go. See how they're kind of jumping back and forth? Like they have a little bit of a shake to them. So in the last update, and here without them, as you can see, they don't move at all. They're bulletproof. So in the last update, with the friction values and all of that we had on the tracks, what was happening was the weight of the machine is too light for the friction on the tracks. So what happens is in regular 60 frames a second, everything's smooth, it works just fine. But unfortunately, if you had frame rate drops, anything under 55, 50 frames a second, you start to get, the physics are bouncing on the terrain and causing it to slide back and forth. So people were having issues in multiplayer, especially where they had low frame rate, where they'd swing and suddenly their tracks would turn 90 degrees while they're swinging back and forth. So now with the new weights of the machines being heavier and the new tracks and suspension, it doesn't do that anymore. So you can't, at least not that I've found, that you can make it turn sideways. It would be really hard. You'd have to be really violent or something, or crank your sensitivity speed up to 10,000 or something. But from basic operation and even a little bit of aggressive operation, I haven't had that issue, so that's resolved now. Now, this is kind of the catch-22, is in order to have the proper weight ratio from the logs to the machine to the tracks, the machine has to be heavy. It just has to be. That's the way it is. So the machine is heavier to support the tracks in order to support the logs. Now, again, going back, everyone's like, well, why don't you make the logs lighter? Okay, well, if I make the logs lighter, they don't settle in the ground well. They don't settle in the bunks well. They don't settle well. They become what I call paper logs, similar to like the in-game Giants ones, where they're just super duper bouncy and light, and they don't react well to the terrain. They don't act well to the bunks. They don't act well in the grapple either. They kind of like sprawl around. So everything starts with the weight of these logs. We set these weights to whatever they need to be to settle properly, then we work up from there. So once I find a happy weight, which these are, so these are extremely heavy in comparison to in-game trees, but this weight is where we need to be to have a good settling of the logs and reaction of the logs. And then, like I said, that's our starting point. So now that we've found a high weight that is good, we now want to move up to, okay, what weight of the machine do we need to be to handle the logs? What does the tracks need to be? What does the heads need to be to match that? It's a very, very delicate balance system between all of this equipment to make it work the way it works. And I know I've gotten lots of controversy and scrutiny from the weight of these machines, and I get it. I mean, a lot of people want to be able to play with their other mods and in-game equipment, but I have a quality standard for how I want this to react because I do it in real life, and I just want it to be that way. So unfortunately, the weights are the weights, and that's basically how it goes. So the weights are heavier in this update, but it's also the best track suspension system I've ever had in the world. So the tracks are not 100% realistic in terms of you can drive this thing up a 90-degree hill and it'll stick to the ground. So that's kind of one of the sacrifices of getting rid of the sliding issues in low FPS players' games. So turning up the track friction fixes the issue of the slide, but in turn, you can now drive up a 90-degree hill, which is kind of unfortunate that you can't find that balance between realism and the game, but at the end of the day, this is a game, not real life, so not all physics are going to be equal. Okay, so new weights to go with the new grapple system. So I wanted to demonstrate the track system a little bit. So now the track system has such a good balance to it. So for instance, if I pick up a load of logs, we're just going to grab a big grapple full of this stuff here. Previously in the last update, if you were off kilter by too much, here we don't need that much, there we go. If you were off kilter by too much, what would happen is your machine would tip over, which is that's realistic, like they tip, but when it was tipping, it would start to shake, like the machine would violently shake. So what I have now is it rolls really, really nicely. So as you can see, when I'm starting to tip a little bit from that weight, it does a nice gentle roll over on its side, and that is a lot closer to real life. Because I've done this a lot in real life where I have got it tippy. But if you keep on your front tracks, it'll stay pretty even. Now, like I said, the last update, every time you would do that, where you'd actually throw the logs off to the side or to an angle, instead of what it did there where it was that nice gentle kind of tip, it would shake. And I don't know, it was something to do with the tire friction or whatever, but it would just shake up and down like that. And it was really bad. And it was something that irritated me for a long time. but now it is super smooth. The other difference you're going to notice is if you're working in a weird angle. So if you're bunching, for instance, and you're going over really rough terrain with points and sharp parts and strange stuff, you're going to find while you're bunching or while you're operating, it settles way nicer on the ground. So same with this one. If you're processing at a weird angle and you have to park with one track high up or the back high up, or it's really... In the last update, if you were off center, it would kind of like shake back and forth. Like it would just bounce off the ground. It was super annoying. So now you'll find when you're driving, you're parked in a hole or you're parked in a weird angle, the tipping is so much more realistic to real life. The way it really gently kind of rocks, and honestly, just as you're operating, you guys are going to notice it just feels way smoother driving around. It feels way smoother operating in general. The other thing that you're going to notice is it's that issue we had where it would almost, the track would hop on the ground is now gone. So when you're driving ahead, backwards or forwards, it's super smooth on the ground. As you can see, the track is nice and level. It sits perfect. It doesn't hop. In the last one, because of the way the suspension was set up, you guys would be driving over the flat terrain and the track would hop as if you were catching something on the ground, like it would dook, 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 dook. I had lots of reports from people about that. So that issue is 100% resolved. No more of that. Okay, so that basically goes over the track suspension. So the suspensions are absolutely amazing. They are just great. Weights and suspensions. So now the really exciting part that I've been wanting to talk about is the grapples. So I have made some accidental discoveries while attempting to do some other stuff, and I have found a way to make the grapples really, 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 really strong and rigid, while at the same time not crushing the logs violently. So in previous updates, I've tried making these grapples much stronger, and when I say stronger, I try to increase the rigidity of them. So the rigidity is basically how much they compress. So if I park my machine, put all my weight on this claw, you'll see it bends a bit. So as I push it down here, you see how it kind of has like a little bit of a bend to it, but it's very minor, and it pops back a little bit. Now, in the last update and previous updates, these things were very, very fluid. Like you could push down and they would bend like spaghetti a little bit. Like they were much more fluid and they moved a lot more. And in turn, what would happen is sometimes when you would do grabs, it wouldn't hang onto the logs very well because the little spaghetti arms would move back and forth and it would drop the logs. So what I've found by accident and playing with dampening and all that fun stuff, I now have an extremely strong grapple, but yet it can still handle the logs without freaking out. So like I said, in previous versions, when we increased it, it would cause the logs to really jitter violently. So now, at full squeeze, at full tightness, they move a teeny bit, but that's just the physics being physics. But that is a solid grab, and they are not going anywhere. This is almost reminiscent of real life. I can tell you right now. It's very, very realistic to how real life is. And as you can see, they settle in the bunks now with the new physics really nice. They kind of roll out, and they roll up into the grapples really nice. But when you grab, you guys are going to have so much more confidence with your grabs now because they lock those trees in there and they do not let them go. They are very, very strong grab arms, and they hang on very, very well. Like I said, my confidence is doubled in loading in this game because I used to be a little bit more like, oh, just fill the grapple quarter full because I don't want to have all the logs spitting out the bottom. Now I take really graphically big grabs, and I know for a fact it's going to hang on to it. Again, I don't want to say nothing can happen because this game's physics are this game's physics, and the trees can sometimes still do very awkward, strange things. Whoops, for whatever reason. But for the most part, you guys are going to find in general, operating with these grapples feels amazing. Now, having strong grapples does not make operator error impossible. If you grab really big trees with little tiny ones still on the bottom, they do still have the possibility of sneaking out of the bottom. And that happens in real life as well. So you do need to watch your grabs in general. All right, let's grab one more for fun. But general, all the grapples insanely stronger, insanely better, all across the board. Feels way better. Every grab is a success, pretty much, across the board. All right, so grapple's changed. Much better, much improved. Entirely redesigned physics and claws and fun stuff on that. Also, you'll notice these two claws have changed. So this used to be called the thumb rake, and the other one was called the WDE clam or whatever it was. So this is now changed. The names have changed. I've kind of gone away from doing like fake names. So for instance, when you guys watch the teaser trailer for the Dangle feller head, for instance. So the Dangle feller head, which I actually need to buy one of those Dangle felling head. There we go. So we're going to buy one of those, and then we're going to buy a 870 to go with that. But let's see if we can find this guy here. In the teaser video, this Dangle head here was called the RX55E or something like that. Now, I just made up these names for some of this stuff because it was just for fun. But unfortunately, some people said that there's like real life versions that have similar names. So then guys were like, oh, is that supposed to be the 55E that's this? And I'm like, no, it's not that at all. So I've gotten rid of anything that had a weird name that wasn't real life. So the WDE grapple is now called a power clam. That thumb rake is now called the power clam with thumb. Or with stabilizer, sorry. But in general, all of the implements that had weird names, same with the Dangle head E50 is now just called the Dangle clam. So some of the names, if you have this equipment, some of them will reset and you'll have to rebuy them at the store. But I just went with generic names so that everybody knows what they are. I left the little symbol on there just for entertainment. But you guys will notice that it's a little bit different. Same with, oops, jeez, there we go. Same with, so this claw has changed as well. So this is now the power clam with stabilizer. That's what it's called in the game. The size has changed a little bit, so it's a little bit reduced in height, but the grapple's still really good. As you saw me loading that, it's still got a really good grab range on it. And I changed the top part up here because it was kind of weird looking. It was like this giant nub, and that's been changed a little bit to make it look a little bit more realistic in terms of how it is. Same with the WDE. Used to be called the WDE grapple. Oh, there it is. It is now called the Power Clam grapple, similar to the other one. And it has changed. It is smaller. It's not that giant, ridiculous claw that it was before because the physics really just couldn't handle the size on that. So we lowered the size to match the same size as the thumb rake. So it's about the same spacing inside the grapple as the thumb rake. And we changed some of the sizing on it. It's just a lot easier to operate and use. But it's basically the same style clam, just a little bit smaller than it was before. But with the new physics and the strength of the physics, you guys will see when you're going to pick up logs and stuff, it just settles a lot nicer. Oh, we got one pinned in there. There we go. Settles a lot nicer. These are very, very heavy trees, and it's handling them extremely well. So, in general, this claw previously was just a little bit too big, so when you loaded it up with too much heavy stuff, it would freak out and drop logs and do some bouncy weird stuff. As you can see now, it's pretty sturdy, and again, with the grapple strength being increased, it moves logs like a boss. I am very, 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 very happy with the way the grapples have changed, and the way that they grip and the way that they act is very, 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 very good compared to previous versions. Like I said, you guys will just be super confident when you're loading. You'll feel almost every grab is a guaranteed grab. Now, when you're doing heavier trees, obviously, just like real life, things can slip out, but for the most part, intensely better. Grapples in general have had a huge increase. So now, on to Dangle grapples. So I have, actually, let's start with the skidder, because the skidder's right here, and that's basically where our party starts. So this is very, very exciting for me. Maybe it's not exciting for everybody, but it's very exciting for me. So I have found a way, with the help of my buddy Colin, who is expert on hydraulics. He actually works for a giant company that's what they do is hydraulics. So because this game cannot imitate hydraulics, you guys understand the concept of free spin, you know, where the grapple freely spins and rotates. Now, the problem I've always had is you either get control of the grapple or you get free rotate, but you can't have both. So in the last update, I gave it a giant ability to rotate, but you don't really have control of the grapple. It just kind of free spins around, which is super annoying when you're trying to work. So while talking to my friend Colin about hydraulics and how they work and how a free spinning motor works and hydraulic pressures, we don't have that system in this game. So what I did is I found a way to imitate basically what a free turning motor does. Now, this is set up on a spring system. So it springs to a certain amount back and forth. But I found with the heavy trees that I have, you can actually overload that spring system if you lower it enough. So what I've done now is I've created a grapple where you do have control of the rotation, and it also has the ability to free swing. This is something we've wanted for a very long time, and I'm very excited about it. So, for instance, you can now turn this grapple. Now, the one thing about it is a slight delayed grapple. So when I turn it, it is a slow kind of delayed turn, and that's because the spring is very low on that grapple, but it does stay centered with the machine. So for instance, like I said, it is solid right now. So when I go to back up, it's not going to swing left and right out of proportion. It'll turn a teeny bit, but not much. So let's go way down here and grab this big pile of logs. So with that spring effect, I can now rotate the grapple in whatever direction I need it to be, which is what a lot of complaints and a lot of problems were. So for instance, if I wanted to turn this, I could turn it 90 degrees sideways to pick up that way, or I could turn it back straight if I wanted to pick up this pile right in front of me, right? So when I pick up the pile, what happens is the weight distribution gets transferred to that joint. So I lock it. Now, the weight of these logs, and pretty much any log that you put in there, is higher than the spring point, and the spring can't take the tension anymore. So now when I drive ahead, and I go to, let's get over here. If I go swing and I try to turn, the spring can't handle that amount of tension. So what happens is it forces it to freely rotate. So as you can see, it's freely rotated all the way around because it can't handle the tension on that spring. So now we basically have a fake version of a free-turning motor, a hydraulic free-turning motor on the grapple. It's obviously not like real life, because in real life it's based on a motor, so we're using a spring in this case. But as you can see, it free turns whatever direction you want to go. It'll still free turn. And then when we want to dump the logs, so let's go dump the logs over here. It will spring back into position, which is not 100% realistic, but it works great for this game. So again, we can turn into our pile. We can still do our 90-degree backup, so I can put it right next to this operator, unlock our straps here, and dump it. There we go. So as you can see, when I dumped it, that head rotated all the way back straight to where my original positioning was. And that's the spring having all the weight of those logs dropped, and the spring turns back on and it swings into the position ready to go dump again. But in turn, we have now created a spring system that allows rotation, so I can control it, and we can still do free rotation. Now, if you have smaller trees, if you go pick up maybe one or two like really thin, tiny trees, there's a chance that the weight of those trees is not going to be enough to overpower the spring, so they may follow and track with the skidder while you're going. But if you happen to hit the tail of the tree on another tree or catch it on something, that force will then overpower that spring. So either way, it's going to rotate without hanging up on the grapple. So it's pretty bulletproof. Mithras, Big Al, and myself tested all of this in multiplayer multiple times now, and I am blown away by the fact that it works as well as it does. So I'm actually really excited to get this out to you guys because it's really cool. Now, we've also done that same effect in some of the Dangle grapples. So let's go to the one that we just purchased. And it's good because I wanted to review this anyway. So this is the new Dangle felling head. So a Dangle felling head's purpose is very similar to the processor. The processor knocking down trees, doing all that fun stuff. But I did want to go over this to show you guys how it works and what you can do with it. So these are not exactly native to where I live, although they are becoming way more popular with steep slope cutting and that sort of stuff. But these are mostly found in New Zealand. That seems to be the most popular place, and I guess in the US as well. So this head also has a free turning motor similar to the skidder. It's a little bit more pressure than the skidder has, but it also has sort of a free turning motor on it. So the purpose of this machine is for knocking down trees, and I was going to show you some of the features of this thing. So you turn it on just like a processor. So if you hit B as in Bravo on your keyboard, it turns on. It says now armed and ready to cut. Now, in order to cut a tree in a direction, you have to wrap your claws around her, squeeze up tight, get it low on the tree. Now, from the videos that I watched, because I didn't understand how these really worked, I was like, how does it have enough weight to push the tree down? But what lots of operators do, from what I've seen, is as they start their cut, they'll actually push the top into the tree a little bit to make it fall in the direction that they want. So as I'm demonstrating here, so as I cut it, you just kind of give it a little bump, and it'll actually start to fall in the direction you want. Boop. Okay, so now I made this head a little bit different and changed it from the processor. So it basically has the processor script, but I disabled some features on it to make it more realistic to a Dangle felling head. So right now, that tree is technically attached to the head, similar to the way it is a processor, but because the spring in it is 0, you can just let go and that tree will fall on the ground. But this head is still technically attached to that tree right now. That's why it's flopping around all freely like that. So in order to disconnect from that tree to go back up for another cut, if you hit your cut button, or X, and then you hit X again, it'll make that kind of cut effect, and it'll raise right back up. Now, people who use the easy development controls that have the processor drop or use other harvester controls, there's probably a button you can hit to disable and reset the processor, and it'll raise the head back up. But for people who don't have that, you don't have to have a special thing. You just need to hit the cut button again. So again, we're going to chop another tree here, push into it, give it a little pressure so it falls in the direction we want. And again, you can manipulate this tree by moving it around as much as you want. But as soon as you're done and you want to drop it on the ground, just make sure you hit X and hit X again. It'll make that cut, and then it'll raise it back up. And basically, we're forcing the script to reset itself, even though we didn't actually cut a tree. And then you can lower your head as well, and you can also make recuts as well. So if you want to cut this guy again, for whatever reason, oops, gonna line it up here. We can cut ends off, but again, it is now considered attached to the head, so we need to hit X again in order for it to disable and reset. All right, and then raise your head back up, which you can do manually, and then you're ready for a cut. Okay, so that's the Dangle head processor and how it works. I wanted to demonstrate that because some people don't really understand how they work, but it is extremely effective for felling. So let's do a demo here. I wanted to show you guys that, like I said, this head has that same fake free motor turning thing that the skidder does. So for instance, previously in versions, what you'd have to do is you'd always have to track it manually where it's going to fall. So if the tree was falling, I'd have to manually turn my head as it's falling. But now with that free turning thing, you don't necessarily have to do that. So for instance, if I want to cut it in that direction, actually we'll go that way a little bit more, maybe that way a little bit more. And we're going to push into it so it falls in that direction. Now, if I want to swing with the tree, you turn, right? Now, previously, you couldn't do this because there was so much tension on that joint. I would always have to ride the rotation. Like I'd have to tap, 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 tap to rotate with the tree as I'm spinning. But as you can see, I'm not touching the rotate button at all, and it's still rotating. And that's because that spring tension is super low. But if I swing this all the way over here, my joint is now out of place. So when I let go, watch what happens. My head is going to rotate automatically back into my face. See how it rotated? Even though that's not the way it was. So I still recommend that you track with it, because there's no system for an actual freewheeling option that exists right now, at least that I'm aware of. So this is really handy if you just want to, you know, do some quick movement. I still track by tapping the rotate button and then line it up however feels comfortable. But for a lot of new people, what it's going to do is it's just going to give you guys the freedom of messing up. Like if you forget to rotate, it's not going to freak the grapple out. So like if I drop a tree and I'm like, oh, that's not where I wanted it. Oh, well, I'll just spin over here. You don't have to press that button to have it not freak out. Because if you tried this on my current versions of any of my dangle heads, it'll freak right out if you try to swing that far. The grapple will literally eat itself and roll up into it. So now it's got all that free swing in the rotation just to give you some forgiveness. Again, I still recommend that you track with it, with that button, just to keep it so that you're level with it. But if you don't, there's not enough power there to change it. So if I grab this tree off the ground and I try to rotate my head, at max rotation, it'll turn a little bit, but there's not enough spring there to actually swing the tree around. So if I let go, it'll like whip, oops, I didn't turn it here, one sec. If I let go of this, you'll see it like whips the head around because the spring tension can't handle the weight of that tree, which is realistic. Because in real life, there's no way this tiny little hydraulic motor would be able to handle whipping that tree around like that. So again, it just gives you a lot more safety in your own operating. And now this same effect has been applied to the dangle head. Used to be called the E50. So there's a dangle head that just free swings like that as well. And it's got about the same physics as this guy. But that is a huge change. And the reason I'm going so depthly into it is it's a huge new system, and it's going to be really weird for some people because I've never had that before. So when you're cutting, you're going to notice it's way smoother, way easier to pile logs. And yeah, basically just kind of mess around with all that fun stuff. Okay, so let's move on to the processor, since we have a skid laying right in front of us over here. So all the processors, all the dangle head processors, that is, have been changed. So the feed rollers have been slowed down a little bit. So that was a complaint some people had, that the feed rollers were a little bit too fast. So they now have been slowed down a little bit to make the trees less glitchy. Before it would go probably about double this speed, but now it's slowed down just a little bit to try to make it more realistic. The problem was if you had a giant tree in there and there's trees piled on top of it and you did like full run and it was super fast, it would launch those trees like way over into the distance. So similar to that dangle felling head that we were on, this processor head has a tiny bit of free swing. Not much though, because it's really hard to get that perfect in this game. So this one does have the ability to still rotate trees, like you can turn the ends. But if you get a really big tree, I don't think I have any big ones in this pile, I don't. If you get a really big tree, you're going to find that that head cannot rotate it all the way. Like it'll freeze up, which is realistic because it's simulating as if the hydraulics can't handle the pressure that you're putting on it. So it's a lot smoother to process with this thing, you guys are going to find. It just acts a lot better. Okay, what else have we done? We've changed the swing on it now. I had a gentleman who is a processor operator in real life who emailed me and said the swing is wrong on the machines. And he was absolutely right. After watching some videos, I confirmed it. So what was happening in the previous versions is the swing, which is how it swings back and forth, was really, really stiff in all of my dangle head processors. So what would happen is sometimes you would go in to swing. So say we wanted to grab this, here, actually we'll just pull ahead here. So this log that's laying on the ground right in front of us right here. So say we wanted to grab that log. So what was happening was, because this was so stiff, this back and forth swing, if I wanted to swing in to grab that log, sometimes I would overshoot it or I'd undershoot it and be on the wrong side of it. But what would happen is it would almost stop dead. Like like right now it's swinging kind of freely, but it would almost stop kind of like dead right there, be no more. So what would happen is if you missed, you'd end up on this side of the log and it would sit there, and it was like, well, that's not right, because in real life it swings back on the log. And the gentleman that emailed me described it very well in detail of how it catches the log. So as you swing, you should be able to kind of time your swing and grab it more appropriately. And now you can. So now it'll actually swing a lot smoother, so you can really line up your grabs and hook your next log. So that's just a small detail, but I'm sure it'll help people process a lot better. Okay, so we talked about the flex and the rotation. The other thing that has changed on this guy is the cut nodes, or not the cut nodes, the cut lengths has changed. So previously in other updates, we had 0.5 measurements. So we had, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, etc. We now have whole cut length measurements. So instead of going 1.5, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As you can see up in the very top left corner of my screen, you can see the measurements up there. So as I cycle through them, and by hitting Y, you can see it goes from 15 to 16, 16 to 17, 18, 19. Whole measurements just make more sense. The 0.5s really didn't make a difference, and all of my trailers support whole log sizes better than they do the 0.5s. So now we've gotten rid of that. Also, we've removed 1 to 4 meters, I think. Yes, so 1 to 4 meters has been removed from the lengths. We now start at 5 meters for log cuts. And the reason for this is there's really nothing under 5 meters that is purposeful for logging operation, especially with my equipment and my trailers. None of them support a log under 4 meters anymore. Honestly, if you guys really need to cut 4 meters, you can use your chainsaw, because anything under 5 meters is kind of ridiculous. I mean, even a 5 meter log, looking at this piece here, roll that back. So even a 5 meter log, I mean, that's a 5 meter log, which is not big at all. It's a teeny little guy, and our grapples are as powerful as they are. Anything under a 5 meter log, it's just going to be a pain in the butt. So for this stuff now, it's all going to be in the 5 meter and up range, and that just makes life a little bit easier for everybody. So yeah, like I said, the processor in general is just a lot smoother to operate. You guys will find it works way better. When you're fighting with these tiny logs, it's kind of a pain in the butt because they're so light in comparison to the heavy ones. It does create a bit of a challenge, though, if you guys are looking for a bit of a challenge. But in general, it swings so much nicer. There's a little bit of forgiveness in the rotation play, similar to all the dangle heads now. So it gives you a much better experience while you're working, and it's just very, very smooth. Very, very smooth. Okay, so that's the processors. Lots of changes, but lots of smooth stuff that has improved. ProPack Buncher. This is a big change. Huge change on the Buncher. So the Buncher has been violently improved. It is much improved. So one thing that's changed, I'll go over the physical changes here first. So one thing that's changed is the claws. So the top claw is now shorter. It used to stick out to like almost about here, if you can believe that. It is shorter in order to get closer to trees. So what would happen in previous updates is with that long claw sticking way out, you would go to grab a tree, and if there was one really, really close to you, another one that you wanted to swing over and grab, you'd actually hit that long tong on the trees. So you'd have to back the whole machine up like really, really far in order to get the next tree. So now with the shorter grab arm, it actually lets you work a lot closer to the machine, so you don't have to keep backing up and stretching your arm out super far. And looking at real-life machines, that claw length is pretty realistic. There's a couple with a teeny bit longer, but not by much. That's a pretty standard size for the claw length across the board. Total redesign of the cut nodes on it, so it cuts way more smooth, way more buttery smooth. The saw plate on the bottom retracts a lot better so that the trees go in really well, and the grab arms have been greatly improved so that you can grab trees a lot more efficiently. So we'll turn this on. Also on the bottom, you'll find it's easier to kick up dirt. Some people really wanted that feature back. So as you can see, I can I can score the ground and make it dirty a lot easier. In the last update, you really had to smash the head into the ground, but now you don't have to. I made it easy again because that's what people really wanted. The weight of the head is quite heavy. That was one of the configuration changes that made it balance better. So as you can see, if I shake it back and forth, you get a little bit of hop with it. Honestly, once you start cutting, you're not even going to notice. It's just when you're waving it around. But when you go in, you'll notice you can push the tree much more efficiently into, or push the head much more efficiently into the tree to make that cut. And it just cuts really, really, really smooth, so you can do angled cuts, and you can do multiple tree cuts a lot more efficiently as well. So really easy to cut, really, really smooth cutting. And like I said, I'm going to try to find 2 in a row here. So we'll grab a few. So again, your grab arms are muchly improved. So you can really get right in there, grab lots of trees. And even with that shorter length, you can still take lots of trees into these grab arms. I'm just going to try to find a group of smaller ones here. And then we can just kind of clean up. So really easy. You're really able to push into that tree. So always line it up with the center. Go for that cut. You can do it while you're walking even. It's so easy. And they cut so smooth now. Very buttery smooth. That's really, really easy to get lots of them into the grab. So the other change that happened with the new cut node style is if you want a high stump, you can. So if you want to stick your stumps up higher, oh geez, here, we'll go over here and start again. You can high stump with this machine, which I'm not very good at because I'm used to just ground pounding here. But so if you want to go in for a high stump, you can to still leave high stumps or even medium-sized stumps. But if you go to the ground where you're actually kicking up dirt, it's going to wipe that stump right out. So there's no stump at all. I realize that's not realistic to real life, but because of this game, it's actually kind of nice if people... There's lots of people that said they wanted that feature back where they can just wipe out the whole stump because they're annoyed having to go around and clean up stumps. And the stumps aren't exactly crazy realistic either. So as you can see, it leaves no stumps behind. But in real life, you really don't want to be dragging your blade on the ground. In fact, you'll probably get fired if you were doing that. So if you really do want to do high stumping or like ground off the ground stumping, you still can. Probably not with these small trees because they tend to don't leave stumps. You just keep your head off the ground so that's not eating any of the ground, and then you can do stumping to leave something behind if you really want. But for the most part, the stumps in this game are kind of a pain in the butt for lots of people, so that feature is now back. But as you can see, the cutting is really smooth, and it's really easy to get groups of trees as well. What I was kind of hoping was to find a couple of trees doubled up here so that I could do a good slide through. Let's go see... Oh, here we go. Here's 2 in a row. Perfect. There's another 2 in a row there too. So if you have 2 trees in a row that are that close to each other, the last update, the cut nodes were not super great, to be honest. So if you went to hit both those trees, it would actually hang up and launch your machine back. Now, as you can see, I can easily butter through both of those trees without even thinking about it. Easy peasy. Now you can do that with bigger trees as well. Really easy to snap grab trees. That node has been so that the cuts reset really fast. So you can just keep chopping, keep cutting, and it works really, really, really well for sniping trees down. Same like if you wanted to do kind of a scoop cut, you could go in and get both of those at once, as opposed to before, if you hit it wrong, your whole head would hit the wall and you go flying back and make a giant mess. All right, last tree. Crazily efficient cutting head, and with the new weights and tracks on the machines, it's a really good balance. It's a really good feel. It actually has that really nice weight to the head to make you feel like you have some weight on the end while you're cutting these trees as well. Because in real life, believe it or not, buncher heads, they kind of weigh a little bit. So yeah, you guys will notice a huge difference in that buncher head, but it'll make you guys improved across the board as buncher operators. So I'm really excited about that one too. Okay, we're coming to the end of the list here. I know this is a crazy long video, and usually they aren't this long, but there's lots of cool stuff that I wanted to go over, so we're just giving her here. So Logger Mac, let's pull off our bad loading job here. Logger Mac has changed. So the sound effects have changed. It's got a lower kind of tone. This is based off another in-game truck. It's not a custom sound by any means. It's just based off of the older Mack truck. I put it on this one because it sounds a lot cooler in my opinion. Now, the suspension has changed on these. The suspension and the torque and the tires and everything has changed on these. So in previous versions of this truck, what would happen is if you had a load on, the truck would take off really fast, like too fast. And what would happen is it would cause sometimes the logs to slip, or it would just be really unrealistic, like violently. It would go 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds, which is not realistic for a machine this big. So now the complication for me was trying to have enough torque and enough power in this truck to be able to haul these heavy machines, but at the same time also be able to haul loads of logs, which are much lighter than the machines, without losing the ability to have kind of a normal acceleration from it. So now in this update, I found a way to make it so they accelerate fairly reasonably. At times they probably can take off a little fast still, but for the most part, this is their takeoff speed now. So 0 to 20, that's at full throttle right now. As you can see, it kind of gradually accelerates. We'll go to a stop. Again, gradually accelerates, stop. Same with reverse, gradually accelerates, stop. Very smooth driving. So now when you're going, it's not going to take off to like 300 miles an hour right off the bat. It'll drive really smooth, but at the same time, this crazy truck still has that amount of torque of a Titan monster creature. It can drive up some crazy sharp corners and stuff while dragging a low bed with a machine on it. So it's very strong, lots of torque, lots of weight, but at the same time now it accelerates very reasonably. So people aren't going to have a total freak out about that. Okay, so that's the truck. Okay, there's a couple more things, nothing really big. The B-Train trailer. So the B-Train log trailer and the pup have been changed, so they're larger. So we'll just go scoop it here. B-Train. So there we go. So the B-Train, it's longer, like the trailer's longer, so you can now fit 6-meter logs in these bunks, which was a thing several people wanted, because before the last version you could only fit 5-meter logs in there, which was really tiny and it was still really tight. So this whole trailer's been expanded. The bunks are wider, so you can actually fit more stuff in it. Same with the B-Train pup, which is this little guy here. It is now a little bit wider, so you can fit 6-meter logs. Another change is the tire configuration's changed a little bit. That way you're able to stack it a little bit better. I've also given people the option of stacking it in 2 different locations. So in the current version that you guys have, you can only stack it on this bunk. So you put the 2 tires on either side of this stake to stack it so that the tongue is sticking out the front. You can now stack it onto this back bunk if you want. I added these 2 little kind of tire holder dealios similar to the middle here. So you can actually stack it on the rear bunk as well, and it won't hit those back tires. It's actually way easier to stack it on the rear bunk as well. That's similar to some B-Trains. So you can stack it either one stake up or the back stake, and it settles really nicely between the 2 parts of the frame. So if you guys use this commonly and you're loading it, you guys will be able to play with that. The molly has also changed. So this little piece down here that you grab to lift and put it onto the back of the truck, the molly has changed, so it's a little bit more, has a little bit more friction, a little less give, so it's a little bit easier trying to line your truck up without it getting stuck. You have a lot more control with the loader while you're putting it on, and that's the same with the other molly on this little single bunk hay rack style one here. So yeah, and you can intertwine, you can interconnect them now too. So this pup will fit onto the B-Train. This B-Train will fit onto the other pup. Like, all of the joints are interconnected now, so you can hook whatever of these trailers up to whatever trailer you want. So you guys can make your own custom trains of weird trailers if that's really what you want to do. Okay, and that's it for gameplay changes. The last one is the tree grinder has been discontinued. So the tree grinder was the one that you attached. It was a Giants in-game one that got repurposed, and you were able to attach it to the heads and use it as a grinder on the ground. So we stopped using it a while back. because of this mod. And this isn't my mod, but I'm going to show it off anyways. So this is the land clearing mod, which is just a gas tank on the ground, which is also a vehicle. So if I tab to it, I will become a gas tank here. So again, this is not my mod. I didn't actually even look who the person was that created it. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, I think you actually have to get in it here. Hold on. 1 sec here. We'll teleport our butts over there. Oops, that is not where I want to go. I'll go here. Thank you. Oh, did I not buy it? Oh yeah, I did buy it. There it is. So it's a gas can on the ground. This is called the land clearing mod, and it is on the it's on the mod hub. So it's a gas can that you can bring around with you anywhere you want. So you can throw it in the back of a truck or carry it or lock it down on a trailer or whatever. Bring it out to a site, and you can enter it like a vehicle. So if you hit E, you can enter it and get inside it. So now here we have a gas can. That is us. We are a gas can. If I hit F1, you'll see the menu up here. So if I start the engine like a vehicle, I hit enter, it turns into fire with a fire sound effect. And then if I hit B, it basically turns it on so that it'll burn sticks and wood and stuff. So it's kind of like a slash pile, right? And I'm sure lots of you have had this mod for eons, but I'm new to it. Thanks to Chad, he introduced it to me. So I just bring this out to the sites now and leave it on the ground. And what'll happen is anytime I need to get rid of a pile of tops, I just pile them all around this gas can, get in it, fire it up, wipe it out. It's so much easier than hooking on the grinder and dragging it around and tracking around and cleaning up. It's way faster and way better. So the tree grinder that I really wasn't a super big fan of is now gone, is not included in the FDR logging pack anymore. Instead, we use this mod, which is not included in my pack, but you can download it on Mod Hub or find other chippers or other ways that you want to get rid of your tops and broken bits. But yeah, okay, so that's it. We had like an hour-long video of mod updates. So if you actually watched this far and you're still in this video, congratulations, because I don't think anybody will make it this far. But if you did, awesome. Glad you're listening. I am super proud of the 1.3 update. This is a game changer, in my opinion, for all of my mods that has been gone for a long time here. So I hope you guys enjoy the new toys. I hope you enjoy the new sounds, the new changes. I can't wait to see your guys' videos and comments about how you're doing. So yeah, let me know if you guys have anything to say about it in the comments below, or I'll see you guys on Discord. All right, guys, catch you later. Bye.